Hey, welcome to Social Civics. Today, we're rebooting our understanding of one of the most important documents ever written, the U.S. Constitution. We tend to think of it as this old, dusty piece of parchment, but it's so much more than that. It's really the operating system for the entire country. And understanding how that system works, that's step one to being a truly engaged citizen.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute crisis that basically forced the founders' hands. Then, we'll see how they hammered out a brand new government, take a look at the blueprint they designed, and explore how it protects our basic rights. We'll also get into how this 200-year-old document is still so relevant today. And finally, we'll talk about the most important part, your role in all of this.
Okay, before we jump in the time machine and head back to the 1780s, let's just pause for a second. Think about these questions. Can you post your uncensored opinion online? Can the police just barge into your house for no reason? These aren't just hypotheticals, right? The answers are literally hardwired into the Constitution. It's the rule book that protects you. Knowing your rights is power.
So let's set the scene. The American Revolution is over. We won. But the victory felt kind of hollow because America's first shot at a government, its first draft, wasn't just a little flawed. It was completely falling apart. So this first government was called the Articles of Confederation. And here's the key thing to understand. It was designed to be weak. On purpose. Think about it. They had just fought a whole war to get away from a powerful king. The last thing they wanted was another strong central government bossing them around. So what they created was more like a friendly club of states than one unified country.
And just look at how weak this thing was. The national government couldn't collect taxes, which means it couldn't pay its bills or its soldiers from the war. There was no president to enforce laws, no national courts to settle disputes. It got so bad, states started taxing each other's stuff, basically starting little trade wars. This led to actual chaos, like Shays' Rebellion, where a bunch of angry farmers rose up, and the national government was literally too powerless to stop them. The country was on the brink of collapse.
And this wasn't some kind of exaggeration. It had leaders like George Washington just filled with despair. He and a lot of others were genuinely scared that this whole American experiment was about to crash and burn just a few years after it started. So it was obvious something had to change, and fast. Out of that desperation, a call went out for a big meeting in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787. Now, the official job was just to tweak the Articles of Confederation, but some of the delegates had much bigger plans. So after a few attempts that kind of fizzled out, 55 delegates finally got together. And they locked the doors and met in total secret. It pretty quickly became obvious that trying to fix the Articles was like putting a Band-Aid on a sinking ship. So they made a really bold move. They decided to throw the whole thing out and start from scratch.
And this is where the whole convention almost blew up. It all came down to one question. How should we be represented? The big states, like Virginia, said, hey, it should be based on population. More people, more votes. But the small states like New Jersey were terrified. They thought they'd be completely ignored, so they demanded every state get an equal say. It was a total standoff. The solution they came up with was, frankly, genius. It's known as the Great Compromise. They said, okay, let's have a Congress with two parts. In one part, the House of Representatives, the number of seats is based on population. That made the big states happy. But in the other part, the Senate, every single state gets 2 seats no matter how small. That protected the small states. It was this elegant solution that broke the deadlock and literally saved the new nation.
Okay, so crisis averted. They had a deal. But what kind of government did they actually design? Let's take a look at the blueprint.
You absolutely cannot overstate how revolutionary those first 3 words were. We the people. In an age of kings and queens and emperors, this was mind-blowing. It meant that the power of this new government didn't come from a king or from the states themselves, but directly from the citizens, from us.
And to make sure that power was never too concentrated, these split the government into 3 separate equal branches. Article I created Congress to make the laws. Article 2 created the president to carry out the laws. And Article 3 set up the Supreme Court and the judicial system to interpret the laws. Each branch has its own job, but they also have powers to check each other, creating this amazing system of checks and balances.
But just writing the Constitution wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot. Before it could become the law of the land, one last major deal had to be struck. So the minute the document was made public, a huge fight broke out. You had the Federalists on one side who were all for it, and on the other you had the Anti-Federalists.
They were deeply suspicious, arguing that this new government was way too powerful and would crush people's freedoms. Their biggest weapon in this debate was asking, where's the list of our rights?
In order to get enough states to agree to ratify the Constitution, the Federalists had to make a promise. They said, look, just sign off on this thing, and we swear the very first thing the new government will do is add a list of amendments protecting your individual liberties. And, well, that promise worked.
And they were good on their word. These first 10 amendments became what we now call the Bill of Rights. This is where we get all those fundamental freedoms we were talking about at the start. It's so important to remember, these amendments don't give us rights. They state that we are born with them, and they forbid the government from ever taking them away.
Okay, but let's be real. The world of 1787, with its horse-drawn carriages and quill pens, is nothing like our world today. So how on earth does a 200-plus-year-old document stay relevant?
Well, part of its genius is that it was written in broad strokes, not as a super detailed instruction manual. This has led to a major ongoing debate. One school of thought is called originalism, which says the Constitution's meaning is fixed and we should interpret it exactly as the framers would have. Then there's the living Constitution idea, which argues that the document has to adapt and its meaning should evolve to fit modern times. And it's not just about interpretation. The framers gave us a way to formally change the document through amendments. Now, they made it really hard to do, but it's been done. We've used this process to do incredible things, to abolish slavery, to give women the right to vote, to lower the voting age. It shows that the Constitution isn't frozen in time. It can grow right along with the country.
Which brings us to the final and, I think, most important question of all. Why does any of this history lesson matter to you, right here, right now, in 2026?
You know, what's really amazing is that the guys who wrote it knew it wasn't perfect. Benjamin Franklin famously said it was as close to perfect as they could get. They knew they weren't finishing a project, they were starting an experiment. And keeping that experiment going, well, that takes active participation from all of us.
So what does your role look like? Well, for starters, you have to know your rights to be able to defend them. You have to participate. That means voting, contacting your representatives, making your voice heard. It means serving on a jury when you're called, and it means staying informed and engaging in civil debate. At the end of the day, we are all the guardians of this system. The Constitution gives us the blueprint, but it doesn't build the house. That's on us. That work is passed down to every single generation. This great American experiment is still going, and it's powered by the same three words it started with: we, the people. So the only question left is, what part will you play?